as establishment as you can get. And generally as nonpartisan as you can get. Edward Luce and the Financial Times, they're all about money. The financial, finance. So anyhow, he points out, he starts out by saying Donald Trump, as the saying goes, should be taken literally as well as seriously. And he talks about how Trump is saying that he's going to, run for president again in 2024, and he's going to be president in 2026 when we host the World Cup and all this kind of stuff. But then he says, he mentions the Mueller report. And he says the Mueller report, quote, showed that the Trump campaign was willing to take any help the Kremlin could provide. Mr. Mueller also cited 10 instances where Mr. Trump allegedly obstructed justice to try to block his inquiry. Edward Luce goes on to point out Mr. Trump is openly inviting more interference in 2020, whether it comes from Russia, North Korea, or Israel, or another country with an interest in his reelection, is beside the point. He has ensured the burial of a bill to protect America's voting infrastructure, the Secure Elections Act. This is the bill that Mitch McConnell will not allow to come to the floor of the Senate for a vote. It already passed the House. Nancy Pelosi got this legislation passed. Mitch McConnell will not consider it. In July, Edward Luce writes, Mr. Mueller said 2020 foreign election interference was already underway. And then he points out Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal lawyer, he doesn't work for our government, he's Trump's personal lawyer, is now the subject of a congressional inquiry over claims that Trump is withholding $250 million of U.S. aid to the newly elected pro-Western government of Ukraine, unless or until Ukraine investigates Joe Biden. Joe Biden's son, Hunter, landed a well-paying position on the board of a Ukrainian company while his dad was vice president, and Trump wants to turn this into a scandal. And Edward Luce points out, Trump also wants Mr. Zelensky, that's the new president of Ukraine, to investigate whether Ukraine helped Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now, Luce points out neither claim withstands much scrutiny, but he says, number one, this shows how far Trump will go. And number two, imagine the rewards to a company that helps reelect him. I mean, is this why Trump is being so nice to Russia and Putin? And then he goes on, Trump's scope for domestic shenanigans is even greater. Under the U.S. Constitution, and this is pretty shocking, it is the vice president, in this case Mike Pence, who certifies presidential election results. And he says, if they could manufacture some doubt on, he doesn't say Fox News, but I will, or right-wing hate radio, about, say, the results in Pennsylvania or Michigan or, pick your state. Whatever the state is that makes whoever the Democratic nominee is as president, then Pence could say, I have some doubts about this. I'm not going to certify the outcome. Well, then it goes to the House of Representatives under the Constitution. And while the Democrats control a majority of the members of the House of Representatives, under the Constitution, when the House of Representatives certifies an election, each state gets one vote. And there are more states controlled by Republicans in the House of Representatives, in the United States, than there are states controlled by Democrats. So the Republicans, if they go along with Trump, could simply say, no, we're not going to certify the election. You're still president. This is in the Financial friggin' Times. But the strategy that I think that they're going to use beyond that, I mean, that's their firewall. But they are ginning this thing up. Fox News, this is fascinating, and there's a great report on this over at Talking Points Memo, which is where I first encountered this story on last Friday, Turney Sneed writing. And he points out that according to Media Matters, Fox News has done 53 segments since May about how bad homelessness is in cities that are run by Democrats, specifically San Francisco and Los Angeles, in California, a blue state. Turney Sneed notes the campaign bears similarities to Trump's attacks on immigrants and his smear of cities like Baltimore as being, quote, disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess. So what do we think is coming? I'm of the opinion that, and by the way, we had a caller in the last hour. I mentioned this, that I was going to talk about this in this hour, in the last hour of the program. And a caller, I believe in Seattle, called up and said that the local Sinclair-owned station has done 2 major investigative reports on homelessness in Seattle. Like, oh my God, you know, these liberals who run Seattle are making the situation of homelessness even worse. Really? The author of this piece on Talking Points Memo, Attorney Sneed, describing the Fox News coverage of homelessness in California, never mentions the fact that the Trump administration has actually cut housing benefits. And we'll get into how to solve homelessness in a fairly straightforward way. The state of Utah has solved homelessness, 90% drop in homelessness in Utah. I'll tell you how they did that in just a few minutes. But he notes the commentary on Fox News has also included some extremely nasty rhetoric toward homeless people themselves. This is very similar to the way that Fox News covered the migrant caravan coming from Central America. Jesse Waters, he's a co-host of The Five. He described the homeless as, quote, drugged out zombies chasing barefoot babies through piles of garbage, and said that we should bulldoze their community and institutionalize them until they detoxify. Tucker Carlson did a 5-day Homelessness in America series back in May, harping about junkies in San Francisco, quote, shooting up in broad daylight and homeless people wielding makeshift knives. So now we've got this feedback loop. Fox News doing 53 segments on this since May, and Donald Trump sending Ben Carson and maybe Trump himself. I mean, there are reports that Tuesday and Wednesday this week, Trump is going to Los Angeles and San Francisco specifically to trash liberal-run cities with regard to homelessness. And according to the Washington Post, Trump officials have already gone to California and checked out an old facility that the FAA used to have, presumably giant airplane hangars, as a possible place to relocate homeless people. So we're going to create internment camps for homeless people? Now, here's where it gets really magic. What Trump is doing is tying homelessness in big cities run by Democrats to the word socialism, and describing blue cities as having tents and horrible, disgusting conditions. These are quotes from Trump that he is testing out in his rallies. If you don't watch Fox News and you don't watch Trump rallies, you probably don't know about this. But I guarantee you, everybody in red state America does. Trump, when he went to the House GOP retreat on Thursday, he said Republicans, quote, are going to fight for the future of cities like Baltimore that have been destroyed by decades of failed and corrupt rule. He described a left-wing agenda of total government domination. These are Trump's words before the Republicans last Thursday. A left-wing agenda of total government domination, crushing regulation, crippling taxes, unrestricted migration, undermining law enforcement. So the same way that they blamed immigrants and then used that as a political thing, now they're saying that the Democrats welcoming immigrants is part of the problem also. Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends said California is, quote, making a choice. Illegals, these are Brian Kilmeade's words, illegals are more important than the people on the street who obviously need medical attention. Lou Dobbs, immigrants should be thrilled because they're getting more benefits in many cases than destitute Americans. Trump is going to be in San Francisco on Tuesday and Los Angeles on Wednesday, according to the LA Times. So what do we do about this? Well, you want to solve homelessness in America? Give people houses. Utah figured out that they were spending an average of $40,000 a person on treating homeless people in emergency rooms, in jails, with police and everything. So they said, hey, screw this. We're going to give them housing. It's called Housing First, and probably informed by the Mormon tradition of helping each other out. And the state decreased their chronic homelessness by 91%. They simply gave homeless people houses. It's really simple. But Trump isn't going to do that. In fact, he's cutting funding for housing for homeless people. And him and Fox News and Sinclair Broadcasting are going to turn this into, I predict, one of the major campaign themes of the 2020 campaign. You elect a Democrat, all of America is going to look just like that street in San Francisco with homeless people on it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Mark my words. In the meantime, the private prison companies are no doubt trying to figure out, how can we get in on this? And welcome back. Oh, my goodness. Samantha, watching Free Speech TV in Akron, Ohio. Hey, Samantha, what's on your mind today?
How are you today?
I'm great, but I'll get better. How about you?
I'm okay. I just wanted to call and raise a point. I am married to a man who has been diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder.
Whoa. And
it's like living with miniature Donald Trump every day. It's a nightmare. I can't even tell you the things I've been through and things he's said to me because of the way he acts. Mm-hmm. And every time I look at Trump, I see my husband acts just like that.
Ouch. I'm sorry to hear that, Samantha. You know, are you doing anything about this?
I'm trying. I am desperately trying. I mean, you know, he's such a control freak. I have no control over any kind of money at all.
Right.
He controls all of it. He has taken my name off all our insurance policies. He's taken my name off all our checking accounts. He has just really done me in good. And to be honest with you, I'm ashamed to say this, but, you know, a couple years ago, he took the battery out of my car also. And a couple years ago, I did a stupid thing, got caught shoplifting because I needed personal items that I didn't want to ask him for the money for that.
Samantha, this isn't a call and advice show, but if I may, there are you're in Akron, Ohio. I'd be surprised if there wasn't in Akron a shelter for women who are victims of domestic abuse. And domestic abuse is not just being beat up. What you're describing is domestic abuse. And I would strongly counsel you to at least speak to somebody about this.
Well, I have. I mean, I have. I've done everything I can think of, and I've asked him for a divorce. He says no, it'll cost too much money.
You don't have to ask for a divorce. You can simply, well, I shouldn't say you can simply. Nothing's that simple, really. As I'm sure you know.
I just want to raise the question about this because I live with a man that is like this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's scary. And, you know, I'm at my wit's end half the time on what in the heck I do. I mean...
Get out.
You know, he tells... You know what? It's easier said than done.
I understand that. I absolutely do.
It's easier said than done. I mean, I live in a home that my great-grandparents built. It burnt down already once. And my grandparents' ashes are in the lake we live by, and it's my home, and he will take it from me because he's got all the money, and I have none.
Oh, my. Well, Samantha, I really hope that you can get some help with this, legal help.
I'm working.
Yeah. Please, I'm so sorry to hear the story. Samantha, thank you for the call. I wish I could do more. I wish I had a magic wand or I could fix this, but there are so many women in particular. There's some men as well, but typically this is a problem that women experience that is just a terrible, terrible thing. Thanks for the call. We'll be back. So every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes out with new guidelines, and we just put up a video over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program that talks about how the Trump administration, in this insanely corrupt deal with the $100 billion industry of ultra-processed, high-sugar, high-salt, high-fat foods that is literally killing 700,000 Americans a year, has said, oh, we're going to change the guidelines so that these fast food, high-processed food companies can shovel their stuff into our school lunch programs, into our kids. We're going to change the guidelines so people aren't informed about the importance of, you know, dialing back somewhat on meat and on salt and sugar and all these other things. It's nuts. You can check the whole thing out over at thomhartmann.com. Look for the video for our, you know, the supporters of our program at thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with we've been talking, speculating, thinking about how Donald Trump might manipulate the 2020 election, and you know what his campaign strategy is going to be. I guarantee you this is coming. It's coming in a big way. Get ready. And the really easy answer is that it costs less, and the state of Utah has proven this. It costs less to provide homeless people with housing than it does to provide all these other services that we're providing to the homeless, including putting them in jail, dealing with the problems of living on the street, dealing with their medical problems, dealing with their psychiatric problems. You know, sometimes, I mean, some homeless people are homeless just because they lost their job. Their unemployment benefits ran out. We had a woman call into the show last week who's living in her vehicle. I mean, you know, homelessness is not, you know, people say, oh, it's a mental health issue. Well, some, but it looks like only a small percentage of the homeless population, it varies from city to city, but, you know, between 2 and 10% of the homeless population are, quote, mentally ill people who really, you know, need aggressive help. The vast majority of the homeless population are simply people who lack houses or housing. And there are more empty houses in the United States, houses that have been bought by foreigners as investments, or as, in the case of a lot of Trump properties, money laundering vehicles. There are more empty houses in the United States than there are homeless people. But, you know, why don't, you know, I think the one way that the Democrats could get ahead of this, and if anybody in Democratic leadership is listening, please consider putting together national legislation to do what, at a federal level, what Utah is doing at a state level, and help out the states to do this. Just say, you know, we're talking, the cost of housing every homeless person in the United States is less than $20 billion a year. I've seen estimates from $18 to $20 billion a year. That is a drop in the federal budget. It's a tiny drop in the federal budget. We're spending $700 billion a year on our military. We could end homelessness, as a lot of other countries have done, by the way, by simply giving homeless people housing. And once they get housing, the vast majority of them, those with mental health problems, of course, they need, you know, mental health housing. Keep in mind, half of the people in our jails have mental health problems, which is not so much tied to homelessness, but you know, we can address all of this at one time in a fairly straightforward fashion. Let's get out there and do it. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. I'll pick up your calls right after this break. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Democrats, get ready. We got to get ahead of this homeless thing before the Republicans, Sinclair Broadcasting, and Fox News bring it down on our heads like a ton of bricks. It's the second week of our Free Speech TV fund drive, you know, raising money for the network and keeping all these shows on the air. And you know, Free Speech TV has recently expanded again, adding Randy Rhodes' program. There's a bunch of new content on Free Speech TV. They're building out their web presence real substantially at freespeech.org. And so if you have friends that you want to tell about Free Speech TV, but they may not have Dish or Direct, you know, a lot of people, I was going to say pretty much everybody has the internet these days. It's not always true in rural America. Some people don't, or they have such low quality internet that they can't stream things, but most people do. And so, you know, if you have friends and you want to tell them about my program or any of the other shows on Free Speech TV, just send them to freespeech.org. It's great stuff. We need to expand our audience. The more people who are watching Free Speech TV, the more people who will donate. I mean, this is a viewer-supported network. And so your help is absolutely critical to keep this network on the air and to keep our shows going. And beyond that, the other way that you can help, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 right now and making a contribution, is to tell your friends about Free Speech TV. Get them hooked on it. You know, especially if you know people who, you know, who may be retired, or younger people who may have a little extra time, people who can actually take the time to watch these programs. Free Speech TV also has clips on their website. I mean, there's a lot of ways to share Free Speech TV with your friends and build our viewership base. This is really important stuff. To that, and Free Speech TV themselves are, well, they have in the past anyway, and hopefully will be in the future, launching things like promotional and advertising campaigns, but they can't do any of that without first paying all the bills, keeping this network going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. This network doesn't happen without you. We've got some premiums. With a $20 gift, you get a Proud Student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $30 gift, this is brand new for this week, the Trump Small Hand Soap. You know, this is the kind of thing that makes, like, you know, a perfect kind of gag gift, or, you know, birthday present or something like that. And the Christmas holidays are coming up, well, a little down the road, but, you know, something, a stocking stuffer or whatever it may be. So that's with a $30 gift. With a $50 gift, you get the Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, the Any Functional Adult Free Speech TV long sleeve shirt. With a $150 gift, an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. This book goes into considerable detail. I mean, I think one of the most important parts of the book is where I document how Richard Nixon committed treason in 1968 to become president by blowing up LBJ's the peace deal that he'd worked out with North and South Vietnam. Then how Ronald Reagan committed treason in 1980 by cutting a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages to hurt Jimmy Carter's presidency. And then how George W. Bush basically stole the election in Florida, his daddy's friends on the Supreme Court striking down the order of the Florida Supreme Court to count every vote, and the New York Times reporting a year later that had they counted every vote, quote, by any measure, Al Gore actually won Florida. So, you know, that election was stolen. And then, of course, you know, the massive interference in the 2016 election, whether it's Russian bots or whether it's voter suppression, particularly in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, is just breathtaking. So that's all in that book, among other things. I think you'll, all the way back to the founders freak out about what happens if the Supreme Court starts writing law or rewriting our laws, which they've been doing now for 100 years. So that's with a $150 gift, an autographed copy of The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. With a $250 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet online. With a $1,000 gift, we had some folks here last Friday, had a really, really nice lunch. It was a small group, just a couple of people. And, you know, we had a great conversation. It's great to get to know people who are supporters and viewers of Free Speech TV. So with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and, you know, hang out, sit in our studio for the third hour of our show, and then we'll go to a restaurant nearby and we'll have a real nice time. So those are the premiums, but the bottom line is that, including the new $30 Donald Trump well, small hand soap, right? But the bottom line really is that Free Speech TV needs your help. This is serious stuff. It's, you know, we're not hitting our goals, which you know, has been a problem for a while now. I think it's because there's so many people begging for money, you know, who are running for president. I'm certainly getting those appeals, you know, literally every day. And, you know, so there's a lot of competition in the fundraising field right now. A lot of public radio stations, too, are doing their fundraisers now. But Free Speech TV is a really, really worthy recipient of your donation, even a small donation. Every little bit helps. So please call right now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. So, you know, I'm basically Paul Revere here. You know, the Redcoats are coming. This is going to be the Red strategy. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Well, if this is the first you're hearing about the homeless being a political issue for the Republicans, I got news for you. That train left the station a long time ago.
Yeah, apparently Fox has been on this since May. That's when they started doing this in a big way.
3 years ago. For the last 3 years, since Trump took office, I would say for sure, maybe even before that. But yes, the Sinclair-owned station, KVI AM 570 in Seattle, has been, all they talk about is the homeless.
Really?
KVI is owned by Como Broadcasting. KOMO Broadcasting is owned by Sinclair now, and also the competitor KTTH AM 770, which is owned by Bonneville, which is Bonneville Broadcasting. That they do the same thing, but harping on the homeless being the problem, and here's what their argument is, that homeless people are coming here because of our liberal policies. And there's really, it's not a matter of a lack of affordable housing in the Seattle area, because these people, and I'll give you the criteria. King County criteria is that you had to have been living here at least 6 months and have had come from a stable housing situation. In other words, you can't come here from somewhere else and never have had a home. You don't count as being from here. But if you lived here 6 months, now, they will contest that. This is a Sinclair KVI radio station. Their evidence is just ask any cop. That's what they'll tell you. Ask any cop, and these people are not from here. They're from someplace else. And then they go out and they interview people. Now, there are 22,000 claims for homeless claims for King County every year. There are less than 5,000 shelter beds in King County. So there's, even if every one of them wanted to go to a shelter, they couldn't. But they focus on those that are kind of the street urchins, drug addicts who don't want to get off the street.
Right.
And
your occasional paranoid schizophrenic who doesn't trust anybody and won't go into a facility. The genuinely mentally ill. But, you know, Paul, the thing that I thought was astonishing about what Utah did is they used to have a program where in order for you to get homeless, you know, if you were homeless and you wanted to get aid, you had to prove that you didn't have any criminal convictions, that you were a resident of the state of Utah, that, you know, they had all these hoops that you had to jump through, that in the last 6 months you hadn't done this or that. They just said, screw all that stuff. We're going to give housing to anybody who is homeless. No preconditions, no requirements. If you have an income, you have to pay either $50 a month or there was some other variable. I don't have it right in front of me, but $50 a month basically. And if you couldn't afford that, no problem. You still get your housing. Back to you, Paul.
Well, that's the first to home strategy is what everyone is working on. But what the right wing are telling you is that you're just enabling these drug addicts. And of course, there are some who have turned this offer down, and they go out and find these people. And whereas a lot of people, there is a small percentage of street people, and this is who they find. But finally, Tom, I've used the kind of the martial arts strategy of use your opponent's power against them. And I started noting that the people that, and I've talked to these radio hosts, I said, the people that you're talking to, you're right, they're not from here. Guess where they're from? They're from Kentucky, Tennessee, Kansas, Arkansas. And they're places that are already have high opiate addiction problems. And I said, so you know what? Why don't you start convincing these red states that don't have any public programs at all to stop exporting their white trash drug addicts to Seattle? Why don't you have that opposition? Why do you keep saying it's the
expand Medicaid in those states?
But they won't because they don't have any.
Right.
They don't have any help for them, and so some of these people actually do come to the West Coast because it's easier to live outside year round than it is back in the Midwest.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
That is for sure. So, but they won't acknowledge that. The other thing that I've noticed about the people that they have interviewed is that I've asked, how come they're all white? You don't see, almost never do you see a person of color who's a drug addicted homeless person. At least not any of that they've interviewed.
No, same here in Portland.
Yeah,
of course. The populations of Portland and Seattle are overwhelmingly white to begin with, but.
That might be true, but if they're coming from other places, which is their claim, and
they're coming from red states, yeah,
right. And the other thing is that because they're just trying to turn this into a same kind of these are the deplorable people that are coming from either south of the border or coming from somewhere else. Now, I've known other people who've said that in every big city, the right wingers say, yeah, the homeless are coming here. It doesn't matter what big city it is. They say that because big cities tend to be run by Democrats, by and large. They say your liberal policies are causing homelessness. Right. Another thing that they've done is there is a law professor at Seattle University, I won't say her name, but she's a very big advocate for the homeless, and she's been on both of these conservative radio stations. I called her and talked to her, and I said, you got to watch it because you're being set up. They're going to They're going to cut your interview into pieces and make it look like you are a big socialist, and they're misusing what you say. They'll recut it and they'll cut it and replay it, and sure enough, that's what they did. And I said they're going to use you, so you got to be careful because I said you're not a talk radio aficionado like some of us are. You got to know what you're doing. These guys are not calling you for an honest conversation and an honest interview. They're calling you to set you up.
Right. So this is going to be the sales pitch, I think, going into 2020 in a big way at the Trump level. I mean, already it's happening at the state level and it's happening all across the country. Is going to be there's a lot of homelessness in these cities that are run by Democrats. It's because of the Democrats. The Democrats are socialists. These are socialist policies. The person running for president is a socialist. Now, they'll say this even if it's Joe Biden, is a socialist and advocating socialist policies, and therefore you've got to elect Trump and Republicans who will somehow magically end homelessness by what? Stepping on the heads of homeless people? I don't know.
That's right. And,
punishment.
It is true that there are people have run into homeless people who tend to be in some ways problematic. I mean, there's a guy who lives right near me who's approached me several times. If I'm walking into a 7-Eleven to buy a 6-pack of beer, he hassles me to give him a beer. In fact, I was coming out of the grocery store a couple of months ago, and he actually started reaching into my cart.
Yikes!
To say, I says, I'll take some of that. Actually, he was reaching for my beer, and he said, "I'll give you $1 for one of those beers." And I said, "Wait a minute, man! I thought you don't have it." He's a problem, right? So everybody runs into one of these, and they're irritating people. So this is a way to get people. Trump's strategy is going to appeal to that kind of annoyance. Now, I don't, I know the guy's got a problem and he's probably a drug addict, but
or an alcoholic.
That doesn't mean, or an alcoholic, but that doesn't mean that I don't like the way my city of Kirkland is run. I love the way it's run.
Right. Yeah. This is it's a large issue. It has, the complex origins. Some of the solutions are fairly straightforward, but the federal government is actually dialing back on support for homeless programs in big cities. So they're making the problem worse, and then they're going to stand around and say, "Hey, look at that problem." Paul, thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us. John in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. I would like to echo the gentleman you just spoke to. I've been in Seattle 35 years. He is correct about the stations up there. They've been homeless for at least the 30 years I've been listening to them. So this is nothing new.
Yeah.
But what I mainly called about was I really liked your riff about how they're attacking the cities. And while you were speaking, I did a quick Google search and focusing it on the cities that are dangerous. Right. I looked up to see which states were dangerous. And every state, the most dangerous states, except for D.C., which isn't a state, are red states. So kind of piggybacking on what the previous gentleman was calling about, they're attacking the cities, right? But most of these red states, they have the highest crime. You can look it up yourself. I had to call you in. Highest crime, highest use, lowest education, and for me, I want the Democrats. We already know Republicans are going to attack us this way, but we need to stop being sitting back meekly, and hit them back on how their states are run. Look at Mississippi, Louisiana. They just run neck and neck with, first and last, but he was going to be last. Right.
Highest infant mortality, highest maternal mortality, lowest education, and it just goes on and on. And very, very high levels of violence. We're also seeing a suicide epidemic in rural America and in red states. John, thank you for that. I appreciate the call. That's excellent information. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And in about 4 minutes, we're going to check in with Talk Media News and just get our news update for the day. Stick around. And welcome back. Len in Silva, North Carolina. Hey, Len, what's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call. It's not quite on the subject you were talking about right now, but I just have a question about the Felicity scandal with their 14 days. What's happening with James Macy?
Isn't it William Macy?
William Macy.
Yeah.
Wasn't he involved in this?
Well, he's her husband, and I don't know. I wasn't, the judge. I don't think this was a jury thing.
But that's what it seems. The only people that seem to be being put before a judge are the women.
Well, I'm guessing that it was the women who were. These were daughters. It's a lot of child caring responsibilities. No matter how egalitarian we think our society is, fall to women. And so apparently it was the women who were going in and negotiating these deals. I think in the case of Lori Loughlin that her husband might be involved, and I thought that Macy at one point was involved, but they've just gone after Huffman. But Len, I just don't know. I don't have the details, and I'm not on that on that program. Bill in Albany, Georgia. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good.
About this homeless thing. I've been homeless twice in my life. I'm a disabled vet. And so a lot of what they're saying about the homeless also has to do with a lot of veterans. Mm-hmm. And that is a major problem. And so, the Republicans are going to get nailed for that. And I want to make another point of, one, if the best way to attack Trump is to boycott everything Trump. If people stop buying Trump or going to Trump places, and
but what's happening, Bill, is that Trump's followers are supporting, are showing up. I mean, the Trump hotels all over the country, or Trump properties all over the country. Those that haven't taken the Trump name off, which is several of them, the rest of them, they're doing well just because right-wingers are saying, hey, let's go to the Trump place and support Trump.
Yeah, that one, they said that wherever that place is,
Mar-a-Lago, yeah.
thing, and then in Florida,
Palm Beach, Florida.
Both of them Trump hotels were losing a lot of money. And if the more Trump loses money, the more mistakes he's going to make trying to get that money back.
Yeah. Doral was losing money down near Miami, and that's why I think that's why he pitched it for the G7.
And one last thing I want to make a point of this Iran thing.
Yeah.
Trump, Pompeo, and all of them have been picking on Iran from the get-go. And there would be no doubt in my mind that Saudi Arabia and the U.S. are in this together, that they wouldn't even blow up them things just to be able to get into a war with Iran.
Right.
Okay? That would not be surprising to me at all, because they're itching for a war. So that Saudi Arabia can control the whole all the Arab countries there.
Right.
That's what the United States want, except for Israel. But they want all that being controlled by two countries.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So
in fact, there was a piece, I think it was in the Times, about how Trump has basically outsourced Middle Eastern foreign policy to Israel and Saudi Arabia, who have become essentially allies in this. Two hardcore right-wing governments right now at this moment, and it's not working out so well. I'm with you, Bill. Thanks a lot for the call. In fact, we're going to be discussing that in the next hour of the program. Stick around. Doug Christian with Talk Media News is going to be with us to give us our daily update on what's actually going on in the world. So our news report will be right back with you. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This news report brought to you by GoatsForTheOldGoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's book. On the line with us is Doug Christian. Hey, Doug, what's the top news?
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Good. What's at the top of the news today?
All right. Well, there was a mystery solved, and that is why was Trump going to New Mexico today? And that problem has been solved, and it turns out that he is actually initiating a New Mexico strategy. Get this, to actually go after Hispanic voters.
Right.
And voters that have traditionally not voted for Republicans, and it's a pretty astonishing gambit. I do not know how he came up with that. I think there's going to have to be a lot of reporting on that, but that's the news.
I would be willing to bet, given that most Hispanics are Catholic, that the largest part of his pitch to Hispanics is going to be abortion. But I could be wrong. But I
think that's a very good guess. Actually, I think that's a very good guess.
It'll be interesting to see. What else is going on?
And of course, well, the UAW strike is hitting Washington politics hard. Trump had promised during the campaign that there was not going to be one plant closed, and that manufacturing jobs were going to be coming back. And already 14,000 jobs have been lost over at 5 plants with GM. And
14,000? There have been 14,000 jobs lost since Trump became president, just with GM?
Yes.
And these are presumably plants that are closing so that GM can manufacture in Mexico or elsewhere, right?
Exactly. And
their sales are up and their profits are up.
Their profits are way up, and this is the big resentment that workers feel. They feel like they're not getting any of the profits. It's all going to the stockholder, and that's one of the biggest complaints for the strike right now. Is they said we deserve that, and what GM is saying, look, is we predict a slowdown. We don't want to be capitalizing too much right now because we see this coming, and of course, an irony of this is that one of the reasons there is perhaps a likely global slowdown is due to trade wars and tariffs.
Yeah.
But that's another issue. However, this strike could go on for quite a while because workers, UAW feels pretty strongly about this.
Right.
And
these people have a strong union they're paying $250 a day in strike benefits, as I recall. I mean, UAW must have built up a war chest to get ready for this. This is fascinating stuff. What else is going on, Doug?
Yeah, it really is. 49,000 people are on strike.
Yep.
Right now, we've got the Iran, perhaps it's an Iran strike, perhaps it's a Houthi strike, although this was a very sophisticated strike because they had to get through Saudi defenses. But, of course, the question is, if we're going to starve a country, what are they going to do? Are they going to fight back? Maybe they will, and maybe
apparently they have.
Saudis are, well, yeah, and of course the Saudis are saying, encouraging us to go lose our people to go fight their war against the Iranians because the Persians and the Saudis and the Arabs have never liked each other. They consider themselves mortal enemies.
Well, it's also Shia and Sunni as well as Persian versus Arab.
Yeah, exactly. It's both. And then, of course, Jerry Nadler, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, has just thrown cold water on any Democratic wish to impeach Brett Kavanaugh. I think that he wants to keep his eye on the ball. He doesn't want to lose that.
Yeah, and I don't blame him for that. It is, and what's come out is pretty awful. But it looks like the whole. I mean, there was, again, this is a piece, I think it was in this morning's Washington Post, about how the whole process, that whole process lasted only a week or two. And the reason why the Republicans were hustling it so fast was twofold. Number one, they didn't want it to go over the 2018 midterms because they were afraid they might lose the Senate and then they wouldn't have the Kavanaugh nomination. And number two, they were afraid that if it extended for even one more week, that more witnesses would come forward saying that Justice Beer Bong Weenie Waiver had done it to somebody else. And sure enough, that's what's coming out now.
Well, big irony, because, of course, when Merrick Garland was nominated by Barack Obama, Republicans were willing to wait over a year before they got before they were able to nominate somebody. But then when Kavanaugh gets nominated, they want to hurry this right through.
Yeah,
one last thing, and that is that there's been this debate within the White House about alleged Israeli spying on sensitive sources within the White House.
This is amazing, Doug. I was talking about this on the air when I lived in D.C. because whenever I walked by the White House, my phone would heat up. And I turned on I've got a little app that measures, how much data is going out of your phone, and it just would explode whenever I was within 4 or 5 blocks of the White House. And I said, there's a stingray there. There is one of those devices that does a man-in-the-middle attack. You think you're talking to a cell tower, and you're not. And I was talking about this on the air, and it turns out, I assumed it was the FBI. Turns out it was the Israelis, at least according to this report.
Yeah, that's what they said. Well, in my computer, I could see it's been hacked into over at the White House. I could feel it. I don't know who's doing it. Frankly, I don't care. I mean, what do they want to take? I do care. But
it's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Doug, thanks a lot for the report today. Yeah. Doug Christian with Talk Media News.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes out with new guidelines, and we just put up a video over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program that talks about how the Trump administration, in this insanely corrupt deal with the $100 billion industry of ultra-processed, high-sugar, high-salt, high-fat foods that is literally killing 700,000 Americans a year, has said, oh, we're going to change the guidelines so that these fast food, high-processed food companies can shovel their stuff into our school lunch programs, into our kids. We're going to change the guidelines so people aren't informed about the importance of, you know, dialing back somewhat on meat and on salt and sugar and all these other things. It's nuts. You can check the whole thing out over at thomhartmann.com. Look for the video for our, you know, the supporters of our program at thomhartmann.com. It's the second week of our Free Speech TV fund drive, you know, raising money for the network and keeping all these shows on the air. And you know, Free Speech TV has recently expanded again, adding Randy Rhodes' program. There's a bunch of new content on Free Speech TV. They're building out their web presence real substantially at freespeech.org. And so if you have friends that you want to tell about Free Speech TV, but they may not have Dish or Direct, you know, a lot of people, I was going to say pretty much everybody has the internet these days. It's not always true in rural America. Some people don't, or they have such low quality internet that they can't stream things, but most people do. And so, you know, if you have friends and you want to tell them about my program or any of the other shows on Free Speech TV, just send them to freespeech.org. It's great stuff. We need to expand our audience. The more people who are watching Free Speech TV, the more people who will donate. I mean, this is a viewer-supported network. And so your help is absolutely critical to keep this network on the air and to keep our shows going. And beyond that, the other way that you can help, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 right now and making a contribution, is to tell your friends about Free Speech TV. Get them hooked on it. You know, especially if you know people who, you know, who may be retired, or younger people who may have a little extra time, people who can actually take the time to watch these programs. Free Speech TV also has clips on their website. I mean, there's a lot of ways to share Free Speech TV with your friends and build our viewership base. This is really important stuff. To that, and Free Speech TV themselves are, well, they have in the past anyway, and hopefully will be in the future, launching things like promotional and advertising campaigns, but they can't do any of that without first paying all the bills, keeping this network going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. This network doesn't happen without you. We've got some premiums. With a $20 gift, you get a Proud Student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $30 gift, this is brand new for this week, the Trump Small Hand Soap. You know, this is the kind of thing that makes, like, you know, a perfect kind of gag gift, or, you know, birthday present or something like that. And the Christmas holidays are coming up, well, a little down the road, but, you know, something as a stocking stuffer or whatever it may be. So that's with a $30 gift. With a $50 gift, you get the Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, the Any Functional Adult Free Speech TV long sleeve shirt. With a $150 gift, an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. This book goes into considerable detail. I mean, I think one of the most important parts of the book is where I document how Richard Nixon committed treason in 1968 to become president by blowing up LBJ's the peace deal that he'd worked out with North and South Vietnam. Then how Ronald Reagan committed treason in 1980 by cutting a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages to hurt Jimmy Carter's presidency. And then how George W. Bush basically stole the election in Florida, his daddy's friends on the Supreme Court striking down the order of the Florida Supreme Court to count every vote, and the New York Times reporting a year later that had they counted every vote, quote, by any measure, Al Gore actually won Florida. So, you know, that election was stolen. And then, of course, you know, the massive interference in the 2016 election, whether it's Russian bots or whether it's voter suppression, particularly in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, is just breathtaking. So that's all in that book, among other things. I think you'll, all the way back to the founders freak out about what happens if the Supreme Court starts writing law or rewriting our laws, which they've been doing now for 100 years. So that's the $150 gift, an autographed copy of The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. With the $250 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet online. With a $1,000 gift, we had some folks here last Friday, had a really, really nice lunch. It was a small group, just a couple of people. And, we had a great conversation. It's great to get to know people who are supporters and viewers of Free Speech TV. So with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and, hang out, sit in our studio for the third hour of our show, and then we'll go to a restaurant nearby and we'll have a real nice time. So those are the premiums, but the bottom line is that, including the new $30 Donald Trump, small hand soap, right? But the bottom line really is that Free Speech TV needs your help. This is serious stuff. It's, we are not hitting our goals, which has been a problem for a while now. I think it's because there's so many people begging for money, who are running for president. I'm certainly getting those appeals, literally every day. And so there's a lot of competition in the fundraising field right now. A lot of public radio stations too are doing their fundraisers now. But Free Speech TV is a really, really worthy recipient of your donation, even a small donation. Every little bit helps. So please call right now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We've been talking about the Republican strategy that seems to be forming and well-formed, actually, over on Fox News, on Sinclair Broadcasting, right-wing hate radio for apparently about a year now, setting this thing up where Trump is going to be going into the election claiming that homelessness is the result of socialist Democrats running big cities. And so we'll get back into that. We've been talking about Brett Kavanaugh. We've been talking about bribery, all kinds of stuff on the table here for the program today. I wanted to get into the issue of the attack on Saudi Arabia's oil facilities over the weekend. On the line with us is the president of the National Iranian American Council, NIAC, N-I-A-C, Jamal Abdi. NIAC.org, NIAC.org is the website, and you can tweet them at NIA Council or Jamal is J-A-B-D-I on Twitter. Jamal, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be here, Tom.
So give us a summary, basically, of what we know at this point. I mean, we've got this headline from the Washington Post here. The Saudi oil attacks are signs of Trump's Mideast fiasco. This is Max Boot's place. And he says, basically, Trump's Middle East policy has failed. At the root of the problem is Trump's decision to outsource Middle East leadership to Israel and Saudi Arabia. In your opinion, is that really at the core of this? I mean, first of all, what happened, and what do we make of it?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. What happened was there was a attack on two Saudi facilities that will significantly disrupt the flow of oil. It's already having a pretty significant impact on those markets, and the Houthis of Yemen, who are currently involved in a civil war, and which, Saudi, with the support of the United States, has been bombing and has helped create the world's greatest humanitarian disaster. The Houthis claimed credit for it. But the United States, in Mike Pompeo, was quick to come out and say, no, this was not the Houthis. This strike was not launched from Yemen. It was launched by Iran, potentially from either Iraq or Iran. So that's the, if you can call it a fact pattern, hate to use that word when it comes to Mike Pompeo. That's where we're at. I think, at the risk of identifying with Max Boot, I think that's the right analysis.
Yeah, if I could ask, I mean, isn't typically there's so much surveillance. There's satellite surveillance. There's air traffic control surveillance. There's all kinds of radar. Saudi Arabia has some very, very sophisticated systems that have been provided by the United States. And we should add, by the way, that the bombs being dropped on the Houthis that have now led to the world's greatest humanitarian crisis, millions of people suffering from malnutrition, on the edge of starvation. The Saudis are bombing the port through which the food comes into the country of Yemen, among other things, that those bombs all have "Made in the USA" printed on them. So, and nobody is suggesting, to the best of my knowledge, that the United States is directly bombing Yemen, although we have been assisting the Saudis in an assistance that I find pretty horrific. But I mean, isn't there enough, radar surveillance that if it's true that these drones or these missiles, whichever they are, apparently drones, were launched from either Iraq or Iran, that the Saudis would be able to say, here's the documentary evidence, here's the video or the screenshot or whatever of our radar. You can see it. You can see where it came from. I mean, if it was the case, wouldn't it take them like 10 minutes to trot that out?
I don't know if it would take 10 minutes. I don't know how sophisticated the attack was. Supposedly it was 10 drones that were flown in. I think, though, what you're putting your finger on is there should be some evidence that is brought forward beyond just our Secretary of State saying Iran has a motive, and so we think it's Iran. I mean, this is the same guy who says Iran was behind 9/11. He'll say anything. But
Pompeo said that?
Instead of going and making this case, we've seen nothing.
Pompeo said Iran was behind 9/11?
Yeah, Pompeo has attempted to link Iran with al-Qaeda because the authorization for war is for war against al-Qaeda after 9/11. So he declassified a bunch of materials, shared them with this hawkish organization to try to promote while he was at CIA. This is something very close to him.
Wow. So how is this playing within Iran? I know that they've come out and said, no, we didn't do this. But beyond that.
Iran is denying any involvement. I do think that, Iran has provided support for the Houthis. So there's probably a good chance that there are some Iranian fingerprints on this. But the notion that Iran has command and control over the Houthis or any other group that might have been involved with this, I think is a little bit gray. Right. And I do, we talk about the humanitarian disaster in Yemen. There's also the fact that Iran is under these massive sanctions from the U.S. Iran is not able to export its own oil. And so, there's probably a motive for Iran to push back. But there's also this question of, well, the Iranians are actually open to negotiations. There was talk of a potential meeting between Trump and Rouhani. And I think the Iranians really wanted to see some movement on the sanctions issue before they could green light such a meeting, and now that seems to be completely off the table.
Which is another strong argument for arguing that Iran had nothing to do with this. They might have sold this weaponry to Yemen on the assumption that Yemen would use it to defend itself against the Saudis locally, but that had they known that this was going to be the outcome, they wouldn't have done it at this point in time. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a reasonable explanation.
The other thing that I find fascinating is that a couple of days ago, Trump, or yesterday, early on, let's say early after this happened, Trump was all over, this is all Iran's fault. And then suddenly he started dialing it back and started talking out loud about, or tweeting about, how America is now an oil exporting country. And it hit me, maybe Trump got a phone call from some of the local oil barons in the United States saying, this really isn't a bad thing for us. The price of oil just went up $15-20 a barrel. We're going to make a hell of a lot more money. Why don't you just back off and just let us make our money here? What do you think of that?
Well, I think the problem is that Trump is really motivated to have a strong economy. And if this shock has a negative value on the economy and helps to trigger a recession in an election year, that's a big problem for Trump. Right. So I think he's juggling a series of interests that include wanting to look like a deal maker, wanting to not look like a warmonger, but to look tough, the outsourcing of foreign policy in the Middle East to Saudi and the Israelis, and then the desire to be reelected and have a strong economy. And I don't think he's up to the task of juggling all these things.
Yeah, I think to say the very least. So we're talking with Jerome Abdi, the president of the National Iranian American Council, NIAC.org. So for Americans who are, who are calling their members of Congress and saying, please do or don't do something, for those of us who are concerned about the future of U.S. foreign policy in the region, what do you think is the most useful response to all of this?
It's really important that there's a political firewall against military action. And I think that without a strong response from the grassroots, as well as, in the media, there's going to be this growing acceptance by sort of the national security class in Washington that the U.S. has to respond. There were people who are often associated with the reasonable side of the debate who, the last time there was this potential flare-up, they supported U.S. strikes without really understanding the implications and the fact that that would likely lead to this unraveling that could lead to an all-out regional war. So I really think, for people at home, it is really important to call both your representative as well as your two senators and ask them to come out on the record and push back against any unauthorized war. And they can do that now, and they're not doing it.
Right. And Congress, the Constitution is very clear. Congress has the power to declare war, not the president. And, he's trying to use these old AUMF as authorizations to use military force that really just don't apply here. Jamal, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tom.
Good talking with you. We'll be right back. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. I want to get into Trump's war on children, too. And welcome back. There we go. Mick in Burton, Washington. Hey, Mick, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
You are an inspiration to me.
Well, thank you.
I hope that this message is on topic. I'm myself, I'm a senior like yourself. I'm also educated as you are, and I also live in a small or tiny domicile, which is an RV. And the reason for calling was initially when you started your program out about homelessness, I immediately caught my ear because I go up and down the West Coast in my RV and experienced discrimination because I'm a senior tourist, not a homeless person. I can go to a place and put my RV there and not be bothered.
Right.
What I'm finding is that each town is discriminating against people who have older RVs, who, by no choice of their own, like myself, I have a 40-year-old RV with only 50,000 miles on it, and it's able to go up and down the West Coast, and yet I still get harassed by the authorities because I find myself in places where they aren't going to tolerate older RVs in the area.
Right.
So my question to you is, since you live aboard, do they discriminate in the marina where you live against older boats being there?
Well, I haven't lived in that marina for a year and a half, 2 years, but we lived there in D.C. I'm in Portland now. But, there was sort of a minor caste system, but no, broadly speaking, no, that's not the case. But I'll tell you a personal story here, Mick, and this is, we had, we live in a house now, Louise and I, and 3 weekends ago, an older RV parked in front of our house, literally right in front of our house, And around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, these people were partying loud in their RV. And in the morning, it was gone, but there was a bag of trash that was strewed all over our yard, including several syringes. Now, I don't know if they were used for insulin or if people were shooting up to get high, but there were literally a couple of syringes in my front yard. And the buzz around our neighborhood is that this is, a local group of young homeless people who have acquired a cheap old RV, and they're just parking it in different places every night. And we're not the only ones to be concerned about it. How do you think that? With this happening, how should people be responding to this?
Well, I've actually heard of the very same things from the authorities in towns where, like, no matter whether it's Astoria or it's Santa Cruz, California, or it's Berkeley or it's Seattle.
Oh, this was Portland.
Yeah, Portland's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It actually is more tolerant of the homeless.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, maybe for people who are living in RVs, we should have, a facility where they can go park and empty their trash and whatnot.
Absolutely. Have them more tolerance in the towns where that's going to happen.
Yeah, there you go. Mick, thanks a lot for the call. It's nice to hear. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's the second week of our Free Speech TV Fund Drive. So every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes out with new guidelines, and we just put up a video over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program that talks about how the Trump administration, in this insanely corrupt deal with the $100 billion industry of ultra-processed, high-sugar, high-salt, high-fat foods that is literally killing 700,000 Americans a year, has said, oh, we're going to change the guidelines so that these fast food, high-processed food companies can shovel their stuff into our school lunch programs, into our kids. We're going to change the guidelines so people aren't informed about the importance of, dialing back somewhat on meat and on salt and sugar and all these other things. It's nuts. You can check the whole thing out over at thomhartmann.com. Look for the video for our, the supporters of our program at thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann here with you, and Alan in Springdale, Utah. Hey, Alan, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Some of these other calls kind of fit in with what I'm trying to say. I told your screener I wanted to talk about gentrification, but that's just kind of a buzzword for something that's maybe bigger than that. But unaffordable housing is a problem that's spreading to more and more of the country.
Right.
That's my understanding. And I'm in a tiny town next to a national park, but 50 miles away, there's a bigger town, St. George. And St. George's economy is always depended on kind of real estate booms. Since my family comes from there, I've seen it go through this cycle over the decades. There was a big boom leading up to savings loan crash in '87, and then picked up again a few years later and crested just before the crash of '07, '08. And St. George's economy is kind of built on real estate development. So what I'm getting at is anytime you have, flows of money and wealth going from one part of the country to another, as in baby boomers retiring to St. George because it's got a nice climate, or people fleeing Los Angeles because of crime or whatever, you get more and more unaffordable real estate.
Right. We're seeing that here in Portland. There's over the last 20 years or so, there's been a huge influx of people coming from California because housing is half as expensive here as it is in San Francisco or Los Angeles. And it's really put a strain on our infrastructure, particularly our highways. Route 5 now that goes north and south through the city is a parking lot half the day.
Well, your last caller talked about people living in RVs, and I'm seeing them all over the place. Maybe it's just because it's been on my mind, but I'm seeing so many RVs parked in people's driveways or near their homes than there were a few years ago. And I'm guessing a lot of those, people letting someone with an RV live there for rent. And so, I don't know what we're going to do about it, but your caller, your earlier caller is right. I'm sure that the Republicans are going to use it in the upcoming election. I've seen some of that same reporting. I don't watch Fox News at home hardly ever, but in the gym or
Fox has done 53 segments on
grocery store
since May.
And what they're doing is they're showing footage of just the worst of a homeless situation. They're showing really old, decrepit people with their grocery cart full of junk and just littered all over.
And that's a small portion of the homeless. The people who are, paranoid schizophrenics, the people who are mentally ill, who really need services. These are the services that Reagan did away with back in the day. Those people are, depending on where you are and what part of the country you are, they're between 2 and 10% of the total homeless population. They're a very small percentage. The vast majority of homeless people are people who have just fallen on hard times. And they got wiped out. Alan, I need to move along, but thank you. Your point is really well made, particularly about the gentrification that's coming along with unaffordable housing. Gail in Middlesboro, Kentucky. Hey, Gail, what's up?
I was just calling about the homeless situation. We've never had a homeless problem, any homeless people that we know of in our small town here. But this summer, we're just, everyone's talking about them. All of a sudden, there's a lot of them. And they're mostly on bicycles and walking. And I'm just, for one thing, like you said about the state mental health hospital shut down, I think that hurt us a lot. And I'm so surprised, well, not really, when I talk to my church-going friends and family, they're all down on these people, and they talk about them like they were worse than a stray dog.
Yeah.
And the few churches that are feeding them, I've heard them say, well, these churches need to stop feeding them even, and we really don't know what to do. And like you said, they'll probably blame it on the Democrats somehow.
Oh, they already are, and it's they're gonna amp it up. I mean, this is they're going to say it's democratic socialism that causes homelessness, and if you want proof, just look at San Francisco. I mean, and this is why Trump is going to San Francisco this week to highlight this issue. They are preparing a full court press on this, and I really hope the Democrats get ahead of it, because if they don't, it's going to be a real mess come November. It's interesting how you can kind of see, they telegraph their moves, and it's this feedback loop between Fox News, who have some very, very, very bright strategists, political strategists, and Donald Trump, who watches Fox News all day long. So, Gail, thanks for the report from Kentucky. Remarkable story. We'll be back. It's 27 minutes past, coming up on 28 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, picking up your calls on homelessness, on what's going on in the Middle East, on Saudi Arabia. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And on where is the real bribery scandal? Is it really Felicity Huffman, or is it the billions of dollars that are being given to politicians by big corporations and billionaires? It's the second week of our Free Speech TV fund drive, raising money for the network and keeping all these shows on the air. And Free Speech TV has recently expanded again, adding Randy Rhodes' program. There's a bunch of new content on Free Speech TV. They're building out their web presence real substantially at freespeech.org. And so if you have friends that you want to tell about Free Speech TV, but they may not have Dish or Direct, a lot of people, I was going to say pretty much everybody has the internet these days. It's not always true in rural America. Some people don't, or they have such low quality internet that they can't stream things, but most people do. And so, you know, if you have friends and you want to tell them about my program or any of the other shows on Free Speech TV, just send them to freespeech.org. It's great stuff. We need to expand our audience. The more people who are watching Free Speech TV, the more people who will donate. I mean, this is a viewer-supported network. And so your help is absolutely critical to keep this network on the air and to keep our shows going. And beyond that, the other way that you can help, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 right now and making a contribution, is to tell your friends about Free Speech TV. Get them hooked on it. You know, especially if you know people who, you know, who may be retired, or younger people who may have a little extra time, people who can actually take the time to watch these programs. Free Speech TV also has clips on their website. I mean, there's a lot of ways to share Free Speech TV with your friends and build our viewership base. This is really important stuff. To that, and Free Speech TV themselves are, well, they have in the past anyway, and hopefully will be in the future, launching things like promotional and advertising campaigns, but they can't do any of that without first paying all the bills, keeping this network going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. This network doesn't happen without you. We've got some premiums. With a $20 gift, you get a Proud Student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker. With a $30 gift, this is brand new for this week, the Trump Small Hand Soap. You know, this is the kind of thing that makes, like, you know, a perfect kind of gag gift, or, you know, birthday present or something like that. And the Christmas holidays are coming up, well, a little down the road, but, you know, something, a stocking stuffer or whatever it may be. So that's with a $30 gift. With a $50 gift, you get the Change the Channel Free Speech TV tote bag. With a $100 gift, the Any Functional Adult Free Speech TV long sleeve shirt. With a $150 gift, an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. This book goes into considerable detail. I mean, I think one of the most important parts of the book is where I document how Richard Nixon committed treason in 1968 to become president by blowing up LBJ's the peace deal that he'd worked out with North and South Vietnam. Then how Ronald Reagan committed treason in 1980 by cutting a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages to hurt Jimmy Carter's presidency. And then how George W. Bush basically stole the election in Florida, his daddy's friends on the Supreme Court striking down the order of the Florida Supreme Court to count every vote, and the New York Times reporting a year later that had they counted every vote, quote, by any measure, Al Gore actually won Florida. So, you know, that election was stolen. And then, of course, you know, the massive interference in the 2016 election, whether it's Russian bots or whether it's voter suppression, particularly in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, is just breathtaking. So that's all in that book, among other things. I think you'll, all the way back to the founders freak out about what happens if the Supreme Court starts writing law or rewriting our laws, which they've been doing now for 100 years. So that's with a $150 gift, an autographed copy of The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. With a $250 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet online. With a $1,000 gift, we had some folks here last Friday, had a really, really nice lunch. It was a small group, just a couple of people. And, we had a great conversation. It's great to get to know people who are supporters and viewers of Free Speech TV. So with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and, hang out, sit in our studio for the third hour of our show, and then we'll go to a restaurant nearby and we'll have a real nice time. So those are the premiums, but the bottom line is that, including the new $30 Donald Trump, small hand soap, right? But the bottom line really is that Free Speech TV needs your help. This is serious stuff. It's, we're not hitting our goals, which has been a problem for a while now. I think it's because there's so many people begging for money, you know, who are running for president. I'm certainly getting those appeals, you know, literally every day. And, you know, so there's a lot of competition in the fundraising field right now. A lot of public radio stations, too, are doing their fundraisers now. But Free Speech TV is a really, really worthy recipient of your donation, even a small donation. Every little bit helps. So please call right now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
So every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes out with new guidelines, and we just put up a video over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program that talks about how the Trump administration, in this insanely corrupt deal with the $100 billion industry of ultra-processed, high-sugar, high-salt, high-fat foods that is literally killing 700,000 Americans a year, has said, oh, we're going to change the guidelines so that these fast food, high-processed food companies can shovel their stuff into our school lunch programs, into our kids. We're going to change the guidelines so people aren't informed about the importance of, you know, dialing back somewhat on meat and on salt and sugar and all these other things. It's nuts. You can check the whole thing out over at thomhartmann.com. Look for the video for our, you know, the supporters of our program at thomhartmann.com. So this is, you know, timely. It's from the dailystar.co.uk. There's a heads up about it from Left of Center 2012 over at DU. More than 134 people have been brutally executed in Saudi Arabia so far this year by beheading and crucifixion, including 6 who were just kids when they were arrested. This was a report presented to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. There are a further 24 people at imminent risk of execution. Among those executed this year are 3 women and 51 people who are facing drug charges that would be considered minor offenses elsewhere in the world. 58 of them were not Saudi citizens. And most were accused of spreading Shia Islam, which is a crime in the Sunni state of Saudi Arabia. For example, this is a story of one of these people who was killed by beheading or crucifixion. Mujafatab El-Squat, a teenager who was set to start a new life in the U.S., studying at Western Michigan University, was arrested for attending an anti-government protest in Saudi Arabia. He was 17 years old. He was enrolled in English language and finance and was arrested at the airport on the way to the United States. He was badly beaten, including on the soles of his feet, before he confessed to crimes against the state. This is grim, and this is what we're dealing with. Anyhow, Tony in Portland. Hey, Tony, you wanted to talk about homelessness?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I'm one of those few people that you don't see sleeping in doorways. I sell street routes every single day. Mm-hmm. I show up, I treat it as a job, and I deal with this every day. I mean, because I have a dog and I have, you know, I carry everything with me. And what I see is people crossing the street. They will see me, they will cross the street, go down the block, and then cross to the other side of the street that they were walking on because that's the path they were going to begin with. And it's tough. I mean, it's a hard thing to deal with, but you have to understand that not everybody out there is a nutball.
Right.
I mean,
no, that was my point earlier. The vast majority of homeless people are not nutballs. But Tony, where do you sleep at night?
Well, I have a porch. I have some friends because I sell street routes, so I meet a lot of people, and I got a porch that I can sleep on. And I usually only use it when it's raining or it's crappy out. For the most part, I just, you know, I have other places I can sleep.
How'd you end up homeless, Tony?
I blew my knee out playing basketball with teenagers, and I wasn't on the job. I had a job at the time, but when I blew my knee out, I can't get any workman's comp for playing basketball with teenagers. I'm going to be 50 in a month. And so, this happened back in 2012. So
what kind of resources are available to you? Are there any agencies or places in Portland where you can actually get housing?
Well, at my age, it seems to be when you're 55 and older, that's when you have opportunities. But I blew my knee out when I was 42, and it just there's a certain age bracket, it seems, in Portland as far as housing. And once you hit the age of 55, you can get access to all different kinds of things. Huh. But I don't have that access. And then the waiting list is very long. What's really, really drives me crazy is that if I could have just got surgery on my knee, I would have been back to work.
Wow.
I work construction. I can't crawl around attics and roofs and stuff with a blown out knee.
Right.
And so, and then if I could have just got surgery on my knee, I would have been back to work probably in 6 months.
But you didn't have health insurance? Is that the deal?
I had a job. No, I didn't have, I was, subcontractor working construction.
So
I didn't have
so you
insurance.
Had a benefit-free job.
Yeah, if I could have easily blown my knee out on the job, and then I would have got workman's comp, they would have fixed me up, I would have been back to work in 6 months. But because I blew it out playing basketball,
you got screwed.
I'm done.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tony, I wish you well. Those newspapers at Street Roots here in Portland, right, is the name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been selling since 2013.
Yeah, they're all over the country. In fact, when I lived in D.C., I spent a day selling those papers with a bunch of local homeless people in D.C. as a promotion for them. I mean, they were using my doing that to promote the newspaper. It's a really great thing. It's a great program, a solid program. Tony, I wish you the very best.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Good luck, Tony. Robin in Poto, Oklahoma. Am I saying that right, Robin?
Yeah, that's right, Tom.
Hey, what's up?
I was gonna gripe about. Well, my husband had a very bad medical emergency, and he's doing okay. So he got home finally so far. But we have Medicare and Medicaid, and we still owe like $1,000.
How much?
$1,000.
$1,000?
About 4 or 5 thousand. About 15,000 or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like, and we live on because we're retired.
Right.
We don't get that much money.
Right.
So
how are you dealing with that debt, Robin?
I'm having a yard sale, trying to sell off some stuff.
Oh my! To pay for your medical bills.
Yeah.
This is wrong.
We get.
I mean, this is the richest country in the world. You've got, Bill Gates is worth $70 billion or something like that, and people are having yard sales to cover their medical expenses. This is wrong.
Yeah, and we get like $15 for food stamps. That's it.
15?
So 15.
Wow.
So.
Well, Trump wants to take that away too,
Yeah, we go to the DHS and they act like they're really giving us a lot of money, and we keep telling them, yes, but we only get $15. So the rest of we have to use the money, some of our money, to buy food.
Right. Is that $15 a week or a month?
For the month.
Wow, that's incredible.
For the month.
That's incredible. Robin, thank you. I need to move along with other colleagues, but thank you so much.
Okay, please tell that woman to get out of there from the way.
The woman with the controlling husband. Yeah, that was a heartbreaking call. I agree with you, Robin. Robin, thank you so much.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good talking to you. Thank you. Jody in Venice Beach, California. Hey, Jody, what's up?
Hi, Tom. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you.
So we have a huge problem in our neighborhood, just down the street from me, because we have a lot of homeless people. They come down to the beach, because it's open space and at least they can camp out and do that sort of thing. And it seems as though the only way that we can get additional housing for these people is through deals with big developers. The city will not do anything that doesn't involve a big development with big developers.
Right, because they're paying the freight for the politicians who are running the city.
Absolutely. And then here's the thing. There are over 9,000 properties that the city of Los Angeles owns within the county of Los Angeles. Some of those properties are hotels, motels, apartment buildings, empty lots that already are prepped for electrical and sewage and water. Mm-hmm. And why we can't refurbish some of these places, and not every place has to be wheelchair accessible, as long as you have enough places available for people who have wheelchairs, right? So, and then tiny homes, $50,000 with $60,000 would buy you, a luxurious tiny home. You could put clusters on empty lots and have, little developments in a residential area like mine.
Yeah.
Instead of building, a 6-story building with $200 million that's going to house maybe 150 homeless people,
right. And
then in 10 years, and I'll just finish after this, in 10 years, what will happen is the developers will come back to the city and say, the finances of this don't work for us anymore. We need to make some of these affordable units market rate.
Right, we're going to turn them into condos.
$1 million
units.
Yeah, and now they have $1 million units, state of the art, that they can sell at top dollar.
Yeah, they did that dance in New York City over the course of the last 20 years, very, very enthusiastically. I've seen it, and a friend of mine saw it firsthand in his own neighborhood. Jody, thank you for the call. Well said. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. A place where despair is not an option. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
By the way, if you want to call your member of Congress or your senator on any of these issues, the number is 202-225-3121. And welcome back. Tim in Aloha, Oregon. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, I'm a pretty loyal listener and stuff, and my educational background is history and other sales and marketing for 35 years, so I kind of understand how the society works. But there's a key ingredient that not enough people are letting, even most of the liberal media, is that basically nothing's being done to Trump because they're manipulating the legal and the political system. But the key element to this is he's got another 14 months in office. That's the scary part. Every day that guy is in office, they're doing irreparable damage to this country. If you pick up the Oregonian every day, there was a full-page thing about women's reproductive rights being destroyed in particular areas. It's getting scary is what it amounts to.
Yeah, they're selling off public lands like there's no tomorrow. They're destroying our national parks. He just rolled back the clean water rules, so that you're going to start seeing arsenic and other poisons showing up in our water supplies. It's breathtaking. Tim, excellent points all. Thank you very much. Tony in Los Lunas, New Mexico. Hey, Tony, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you today?
Good. What's on your mind?
I was calling about Kavanaugh. I don't know if you'd seen the latest report that had come out. The New York Times had to retract their article on.
No, what they changed was initially they had written an article that said it may look like harmless fun to have to have somebody wave their penis in your face, but so and so took it more seriously, and the New York Times and they tweeted that, and the New York Times deleted the tweet and apologized, and they changed the article. So that's the change that people are talking about, Tony, is the assertion that it was harmless fun. Rick in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Hey, Rick, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, well, my two things. You're very right about the thing about the homeless people. actually, the show Adam Ruins Everything did a whole thing about that and talked about how, if we really want to, we could eliminate homelessness. And my point 2 is there's an article in my local paper, that is the Philadelphia Inquirer, a 2-page article about how hospitals are suing people that normally would be, they write off the operation they had, and people were having to declare bankruptcy and losing their homes. But according to the paper, at least, the people are doing it without a judgment from a court. I don't know if that's possible, but the fact that they're suing people and people are losing their homes.
Yeah, and it's not just that they're doing that, Rick. If you dig down into those articles, and I've read a couple of them, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the hospital. There was a specific hospital chain that's been really aggressive.
I think it was Virginia.
Could be. I don't want to say for sure because I don't have the paper in front of me. And,
okay. All right.
And I would like this show to be fact checkable. But I did read the articles about that, and the one thing that I caught was that one of the reasons why the hospital that used to write off these expenses, from their profits or their revenues or whatever, and is now going out and suing people, is that there is a for-profit, basically debt collector company that has made hospitals this is their specific area of expertise, and so they're going to the hospitals saying, we'll collect the debt on your behalf, and I'm sure that they're getting a good chunk of the action. In fact, maybe the majority of the action. And it's tragic that in the United States of America, the richest country on earth, that people are going bankrupt because they got sick. It literally does not happen in Canada. It doesn't happen in any European country. It doesn't happen in several Central and South American countries where they have the equivalent of Medicare for all. It only happens here. We'll be back. So every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes out with new guidelines, and we just put up a video over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program that talks about how the Trump administration, in this insanely corrupt deal with the $100 billion industry of ultra-processed, high-sugar, high-salt, high-fat foods that is literally killing 700,000 Americans a year, has said, oh, we're going to change the guidelines so that these fast food, high-processed food companies can shovel their stuff into our school lunch programs, into our kids. We're going to change the guidelines so people aren't informed about the importance of, dialing back somewhat on meat and on salt and sugar and all these other things. It's nuts. You can check the whole thing out over at ThomHartmann.com. Look for the video for our, the supporters of our program at ThomHartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
People who are members of. Okay, we've got a pigeon alert. Those of you, it's been a while since we've had one of these, but now this is a remarkable story here. This fellow was visiting the museum at the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, which is not open to the public, but he was going there to interview the then director and caught sight of something unusual. It was a model pigeon with a camera strapped to it. Yes, the CIA has been using pigeons to spy back during the Cold War. As I've been saying for years and years, you never see dead pigeons, you never see baby pigeons. Why? Because they're robots from the planet Xenu sent here to spy on us, and occasionally the CIA can capture one and turn it into a spying robot. So anyway, this is a story that I learned from a fellow in New York years ago. Anyhow, Patsy in Arroyo Grande, California. Hey, Patsy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just called to say that, I work with homeless people and poor people at our local food pantry, and I just wanted to suggest before people start, accusing homeless of being some kind of biblical, the new biblical lepers, that they should go volunteer in these places to get to know these people.
Right.
Are we still on?
We are. What was your experience, Patsy? What did you learn from working with homeless people?
Well, the fact is that they cut across the spectrum like, any civilization. You got the criminals and the crazy people, but mostly these are people who've been failed by our system, like that carpenter. He's been, our system actually has failed them. A lot of them work, but they sleep in their cars. It's just.
Yeah.
It's just kind of all this craziness going on, like with those videos from Como and, San Francisco that have been circulated in my community to, make the homeless into, like I said, these biblical lepers. I find that, I did a little research in my community. I find that 49% of them are children, which means almost half of them are. 80% actually are from the community. We had an incident of a woman who froze to death after the warming shelters had closed in the spring in the street because she couldn't, get any shelter. So anyway, that's basically all I wanted to say is I wish people would just go out and volunteer and get to know these people and get to see where our system is failing them.
Yeah, it would be a good start. Patsy, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it. Bob in Westminster, Colorado. Hey, Bob, what's up?
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
By the way, I have almost all your books.
Oh, thank you.
And they're very good, huh?
Thanks.
And I started thinking about a lot of these same things back in 1981 or 2 when Reagan took office, and I realized what he was up to. Anyway,
we did not have homeless people on the streets prior to the Reagan administration that I remember. I mean,
not really.
I was.
So anyway,
anyhow, go ahead. Yeah.
I was assigned there to do a day labor operation. I did that for 4 years, and I supervised someone else for the previous 6. And I haven't, and the thing of it is, and a lot of them are, there because of, adverse circumstances. And the thing of it is that, just real quick, we had some group out of Yonkers, New York, that were professionals in the homeless thing, and they were saying basically that if you are even healthy and you're out on the street for more than 6 months, you develop a syndrome that also has to be treated when you go back to work.
Which is what?
They didn't, it was in a training.
You're talking mental or physical?
It's a mental thing that basically it does something that causes you to lose faith or hope or something, and they didn't go into real detail. We were in a seminar.
Probably some variation of PTSD.
Like a PTSD, yeah. That's what they were saying, I think, basically. But the thing of it is, I did that was involved with it. I did it for 10 years, and it was one of the most interesting and challenging and greatest experience of my life, really, outside of my tour in Vietnam. But the thing of it is, it was really something I value even today because I learned so much working with these people and how incorrect most of the rhetoric is about them.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, Sinclair and Fox and Right Wing Hate Radio are doing everything they can to demonize homeless people. Bob, thanks a lot.
You wouldn't know they were homeless if they were on the street, by the way.
Yeah. I've encountered quite a few of them. Bob, thank you for the call. Doogie in Chicago. Hey, Doogie, what's up?
Hi, Tom. First time calling. Ever since Norman went up, you're my last hope for sanity. Please don't leave us.
I won't. We've got 30 seconds, though, Doogie, to the end of the show.
Yes, so what I want to say is November 4th of last year in Kansas City, Missouri, there was a group called Free Hot Food KC, and they were serving hot food to the homeless in the park, and the health department and police came and shut them down and poured bleach on the food. This is ridiculous.
Oh, geez.
I mean, I wanted to bring that out. This is what the red states do, but they vilify the homeless people, and then the church people just tell them that Jesus was a liberal. Feed the homeless, house the feed the poor, give them shelter.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, it was one of Jesus' instructions in Matthew 25. It actually was. Doogie, thank you for the call. Oh my, I shouldn't say that with a smile. I mean, it's just I'm just thinking of all these people who claim that they're Christians, particularly the Republicans. Anyway. Thanks so much for being with us today. What a fascinating day. We'll be back tomorrow. More of the same place, same bat channel. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It really does require your help. So like Carl Frisch, get out there and get active. Tag You're It. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.